Sankulitam Dripe Parito Vatsa Vatsam Charayam Yaharadvivu Yamuno Pavane Kujad Sankulitam Dripe Paritaha surrounded by Vatsapai cowherd boys Vatsan cows Charayam herding, tending tending Biaharat enjoy by traveling Bivuhu the Almighty Jamuna the Jamuna River Upavane gardens on the shore Kujat vibrated by the voice Duija the twice-born birds Sankulita densely situated Angripe in the trees. Translation. In his childhood, the Almighty Lord was surrounded by cowherd boys and calves, and thus he traveled on the shore of the Jamuna River, through gardens densely covered with trees and filled with vibrations of chirping birds. Please repeat. In his childhood, the Almighty Lord was surrounded by cowherd boys and calves, and thus he traveled on the shore of the Jamuna River, through gardens densely covered with trees and filled with vibrations of chirping birds. Purport by His Divine Grace, say Si Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nanda Maharaj was the landholder for King Kamsa, but because by caste he was a Vaishya, a member of the mercantile and agricultural community, he maintained thousands of cows. It is a duty of the Vaishyas to give protection to the cows, just as the Kshatriyas are to give protections to human beings. Because the Lord was a child, he was put in charge of the calves with his cowherd boyfriends. These cowherd boys were great rishis and yogis in their previous births. And after many such pious births, they gained the association of the Lord and could play with him on equal terms. Such cowherd boys never cared to know who Krishna was, but they played with him as a most intimate and lovable friend. They were so fond of the Lord that at night they would only think of the next morning when they would be able to meet the Lord and go together to the forest for cowherding. The forests on the shore of the Yamuna are all beautiful gardens full of trees of mango, jackfruit, apples, guava, oranges, grapes, berries, palm fruit, and so many other plants and fragrant flowers. And because the forest was on the bank of the Jamuna, naturally there were ducks, cranes, and peacocks on the branches of the trees. All these trees and birds and beasts were pious living entities born in the transcendental abode of Vrindavan, just to give pleasure to the Lord and his eternal associates, the cowherd boys. While playing like a small child with his associates, the Lord killed many demons, including Agasura, Bhakasura, Pralambasura, and Gardavasura. Although he appeared at Vrindavan just as a boy, he was actually like the cover flames of a fire. As a small particle of fire can kindle a great fire with fuel, so the Lord killed all these great demons, beginning from his babyhood in the house of Nanda Maharaj, the land of Vrindavan, the Lord's childhood playground. still remains today. And anyone who visits these places enjoys the same transcendental bliss, although the Lord is not physically visible to our imperfect eyes. Lord Chaitanya recommended this land of the Lord as identical with the Lord, and therefore worshipable by the devotees. This instruction is taken up especially by the followers of Lord Chaitanya, known as the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And because the land is identical with the Lord, devotees like Uddhava and Vidura visited these places 5,000 years ago in order to have direct contact with the Lord, visible or not visible. Thousands of devotees of the Lord are still wandering in these sacred places of Vrindavan, and all of them are preparing themselves to go back home, back to Godhead. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Mukam karoti vachalam famgulam gajate girim jatkripatamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hari Om Tat Sat. In his childhood, the Almighty Lord was surrounded by cowherd boys and calves, and thus he traveled on the shore of the Yamuna River, through gardens densely covered with trees and filled with vibrations of chirping birds. So this chapter, the remembrance of Lord Krishna, is Uddhava sharing his heart with Vidura. And these two chapters are like the Krishna book summarized. So here Uddhava tells Vidura what he's thinking about. There are 9 processes: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, and so on. And in the beginning sections of the Bhagavatam, one of the most important instructions that is emphasized is remembering Krishna. And that's exactly the title of this chapter. So, a few days ago, I think 2 days ago, Prabhu was giving class emphasizing the verse Smartavyam Satatam Vishnur Vishmartavyam Nayatuchit. So, the emphasis is in remembering Krishna. Now, how can we remember Krishna if we don't know Krishna? So the first step is to know Krishna. We can see in the sequence of the Gita how Krishna gradually presents himself. In the beginning, the first couple of chapters are all about Arjuna, all about, as Prabhupada explains, Arjuna is representing humanity. Therefore, Krishna's teachings are directed for the living entities, represented by Arjuna, to realize their own identities. Who are we? That's the first question. And what are we meant to do? That's the second question, chapter 3. And then in chapter 4, he opens the curtains. Sometimes, the curtains are not properly closed and you're able to see a little bit of the deities. So, Krishna opens the curtain and he tells a little bit about himself. Imam vivashate yogam pruktavam mahavayam. I gave this knowledge before to the son Devata and to the great kings of the past, Manu, etc. So he tells Arjuna a little bit about himself. Right? And then he says, although I'm unborn, I take birth. So he starts explaining a little bit, not so much, and then he again gears into the sequence that he's explaining to Arjuna. Eventually, in the middle section of the Gita, in chapter 7, he opens up the curtains, and then he says, I am the Supreme Lord. Adi Buddha, Adi Daivam, Adi Jakyam. The last verse of chapter 7 summarizes the whole chapter, text number 30. So Krishna gradually starts showing himself. This is who am I. This is the boss of the universe. The one who controls everything, the one who enjoys everything, the one who manages everything. This is the absolute truth. Right? Srila Prabhupada often will use this term, absolute truth. And absolute truth, as we were discussing a couple of weeks ago, means the boss and his energies. And in chapter 7, Krishna starts explaining that concept. I am the owner of everything, and these are my energies. Bhumira, Panalova, Yur, etc. All these are my energies. And then gradually he starts revealing more and more about himself. In chapter 9, he talks about bhakti. He talks about how he accepts something so insignificant, like some water or flowers. Here you can just walk and pick a flower and offer it to Krishna. And if you have bhakti, and if you do it properly, then he will accept it. Patram pushpam phalam toyam. So Krishna, in one sense, is very easily achievable. In one sense. And then he gives even further instructions. He reveals more. But again, the Bhagavad Gita, it's condensed, it's quite concise. It's only 700 verses, although for some of us it may sound like so many verses. And, if I read it once or twice, that's it. I remember asking a young devotee a few years ago, after she finished her Bhakti Shastra in Mayapur. And, we were all congratulating her. And I asked her, so what's your realization after? And she says, I think I'm done with reading Prabhupada for the rest of my life. I never thought I would have read Prabhupada so much, but her spiritual master kind of encouraged her to take Bhakti Shastri. And, there she was day after day, reading and reading and reading. He says, I think I have read more than what I ever thought in my life. I think I'm done now. I mean, she was kind of half joking, but maybe true. So, Krishna becomes manifested in these books. And then, in chapter 10, he brings the Chaturslokis, the 4 verses, essential verses of Gita. And in those verses, he talks about his devotees and how they relate with him, and how he helps them, and how he gives them intelligence, right? How he enjoys. It's like a father that enjoys the children playing. And they are, sometimes you see little kids, and then they sort of help each other, and then they play with each other. Sometimes you see in the festivals, some boys are there playing and running and hugging, and one falls and the other one helps them, like that. So it's cute, like that. So in the same way, the Lord likes his devotees to discuss about him, to show his love, Matchita, Matgata, Pranam. All these beautiful verses. Prabhupada, sometimes you can hear it in his classes, how much emotion he had while describing these verses, how much intensity he had when he was reciting these verses. Pritim Purvakam. Priti means love, Prabhupada would say. But more than love, the word in Sanskrit, it's bhaja, that adoration. We give our heart to Krishna, like that. So, in this way, Bhagavad Gita brings us to know who the Lord is, to know his supremacy, to know about his energy, to know the process, and how can we know him? How can we serve him? How can we love him? And the last section of the Gita is basically how can we apply what we learn in the first section and in the second section and apply it in the material world. The last section is directions of how to obtain what Prabhupada calls devotional liberation in this material world. Makes it very, very practical. And then that's it. Gita is finished. Krishna says, surrendered unto me, sarvadharmam paritaya, mamekam sharanam vraya. And then Bhagavatam begins. So Bhagavatam is the explanation of how to apply what Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita. The examples are given here. The devotees of which Krishna briefly mentions in the Gita, in the Chatusloki and other places, chapter 5 and chapter 9 and many other places he describes the devotees or mentions the devotees. So here we find these devotees. We find Narada, Sutta, we find the Pandavas, right? From chapter 7, first canto, the Pandavas entered into the scene. So these devotees and their lives and their behavior and their relationship with Krishna is explained in the Bhagavatam. And just to give us a preview, Uddhava appears in chapter and then the third canto. And then his heart is shown. And you surely have heard or maybe seen sometimes in these videos, we see that pastime of Hanuman, right? I remember exactly, someone may correct me, that he was looking for Lord Ram. Somebody told him, he's in your heart, right? Is that correct? Is that yeah? So what he started doing, he started ripping his chest because he wanted to see Ram, so he's ripping his chest open. Hanuman is very special. I like in South India, when you go to the temples, then you always find Hanuman and Garuda. The deities are there, is Hanuman and Garuda. One is ready to jump, the other one is ready to fly. It's very nice how always observed South Indian temples. The devotional attitude that let me do whatever is needed, my Lord. You're in my heart, so all what I can do is just think of you. I mean, I'm just saying this theoretically, right? It's not that I am at that level, I wish. But, okay, so Uddhava is remembering Krishna, and this is the purpose of pilgrimage. This is the purpose of the Bhagavatam. We are here, this is a holy place, pilgrimage, spiritual pilgrimage place. Srila Prabhupada, in his 7 purposes of ISKCON, the number 5, he says that he wants to build, to erect holy places for the devotees and for the community at large, for the society at large, for the passings of Krishna to be manifested. So this is this place, New Govardhana. It's a holy place by the agency of Srila Prabhupada. And then what happens in the holy places? In this purpose, Srila Prabhupada mentions that I think it's at the end here, right? Yeah. He says, and because the land is identical with the Lord, devotees like Uddhava and Vidura visited these places 5,000 years ago in order to have direct contact with the Lord. So the land, it's not different from the Lord. So when we see the Lord, He's so beautiful, He's so blissful, so powerful. You can feel something, right? So in the same way, the land in itself can give you that same experience. It's identical with the Lord. Do we believe that? Huh? Have we experienced that? Have you? Yeah? Mayapur, Vrindavan. Sometimes you get to some places and remember the first time you went to a holy place, the first time you went to a temple. Do you remember that time? The first time you went to a temple? And mostly are positive experiences. Sometimes I have read people who had very bad attitudes. I remember reading in the old Back to Godhead how I came to Krishna consciousness. It was interesting how the first time that devotees saw the Harinam party, I remember one secretary of Satsuru Maharaj, Madhu Mangal I think was his name, that he was a punk. I don't know if somebody remembers that story. And the first time he saw the Harinam devotees, he went and then he kicked them. I mean, he was a punk with the hairs and all that. And he kicked the devotees, and chased them like that. But then eventually, I met him in Vrindavan in the 80s, 89 somewhere. He was a saint, shaved up and brahmachari, chanting his rounds, skinny tall. I couldn't imagine when I read this story. So, the Bhagavatam explains in the first canto that the devotees are like holy places. In fact, the devotees are more powerful than the holy places. Can you believe that? That's what Bhagavatam says. Sometimes when I say this, some people become a little shocked, surprised. We all know about River Ganges, right? Here the River Jamuna is mentioned. River Ganges and Jamuna. Prabhupada explains are very powerful because they are in touch with the Lord's lotus feet. That's why the Ganges is so important. And millions of people worship Mother Ganga and Mother Jamuna and Jalangi and so many other rivers. But the Bhagavatam explains that a devotee of the Lord is even more powerful than the Ganges. Have you heard that? More powerful than the Ganges. Why? Because to be purified by the agency of Mother Ganga, you have to continuously do certain things. Take bath, go and do pujas, chant mantras, etc. Like we do in Mayapur and other places. But with the devotee of the Lord, it just takes one instant. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra Koi. Lava Matra means one instant. Sadhu Sangha. Sarva Siddhi Hoi. One instant. You can just happen to see a pure devotee of the Lord, like Uddhava, that has Krishna in his or her heart, and your life can change in an instant. So, Uddhava and Vidura, they went to these places thousands of years ago to be in direct contact with the Lord. And I was reading the purport these last few days and trying to find things that are quite telling, quite salient. And here is one. It says that they went 5,000 years ago in order to have direct contact with the Lord. Visible or not visible. So sometimes we can see the Lord and sometimes we cannot see the Lord. But He's there, right? In most of our cases we cannot see Him, but we can feel His presence. And how do we know that we feel? Is it a sentimental thing? Is it an emotional thing? Maybe I have some mental health problems and I just need something or someone to tell me, oh, these places, and then I believe it. It's like a placebo effect. But how can we see, or how can we realize that the Lord is there? Is because our heart changes. That's it. The heart changes. Our heart is dragging us like a wild horse here and there. But when the heart gets pacified, gets purified by being in contact with the Lord, then we think, this is home. That's it. I found my place. Right? It is like that. Maybe it doesn't make so much sense logically. How is it? The first time you see devotees, or the first time you go to the temple, and there's something, I don't know your experiences, but there is something in our hearts that feels good, feels right. Srila Prabhupada gives a basic example of the fish out of water. The fish is out of water and it's struggling. Prakriti shtani karshati, Krishna says. We're in this material world and we are struggling. We think we're enjoying, but actually we're struggling. It's just a slow struggle, like in a slow motion. Right? And then when the struggle becomes intense, old age, disease, and death, then we think, oh, where's my shelter? So before that happens, and we come in contact with the Lord, then something happens in our heart, as it explained here. And then the heart becomes pacified. The mind becomes quiet. Is Bhagavatam says, Evam prashana manaso bhagavan satatam pati. The mind becomes satisfied. Prashana means satisfied. Like you have prasad, like that. Evan prashana manaso. The mind becomes pacified, satisfied. Right? Somehow, I don't understand. I remember one devotee was telling me how when they went with a group of friends to the deities, then they thought, oh, nice dolls, they have very cute. How they decorate, oh, they're so cute. Right? Like sometimes you go to museums or you go to art galleries or things like that, you see sculptures, you see, wow, so cute. They used to think. And then most of them became devotees. They were telling me the story how they saw the first time. So here Uddhava, actually, if you want to go a little deeper, this narration is after Krishna has departed. Huh? He has departed already. Yeah? The chronology is that Krishna has departed and Uddhava is remembering Krishna's interactions with him. And he's narrating. Right? But the intensity in which Uddhava describes this pastime, it's not like, oh, it happened many, many years back. And sometimes we remember things from the past. And we think, oh, yeah, it was good, but it's gone. But in Krishna's pastimes, his name, his form, his guna, his qualities, they are very alive. They are eternal. Eternal means that they are real. Right? That's what it's called self-realization. So it becomes real. So Uddhava is sharing his realization with Vidura. And they are with Krishna. Huh? Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's form, Krishna's name, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's holy place, Krishna's devotees are not different from him. Because, why? Because they help us to see Krishna, to experience Krishna. Right? And that is the common experience or realization with Prabhupada. So many devotees tell, so many of these great devotees, Swamis, Prabhus, Matajis, who had the fortune to see Prabhupada, they often describe how when they saw him, he's someone special. I may not be religious, I may not be spiritual, I may not be educated, but this is someone who's special. We don't know what that speciality is, but he has something different to begin with. And then they came and then they listened. I heard so many of these descriptions. I read many of them. Samaka Maharaj, late Samaka Maharaj, he describes how the first time he saw Prabhupada, they have traveled, in those days, the hippie era, they have traveled from Italy, a group of, backpackers and like that, gypsies of the day. So they went, and then they heard Prabhupada is in England. So they went to the Bhaktivedanta Manor, and they arrived late at night, and they slept, whatever. They could find a place, and the next morning Prabhupada is coming to give them darshan. So he said there were a group of 50 of us, boys and girls, all, not very clean, not very, headspace, no, so grounded. But everyone with a lot of expectation was waiting for Prabhupada. So they all sat in a circle, and then eventually Prabhupada came walking through the gardens of Bhaktivedanta Manor, if some of you have visited. And then he sat with his japa, his beads in his hand, and he looked around everyone and I have heard some or read some descriptions of people who were there or in similar situations. It was exactly the same. They all say that Prabhupada could see through me. Right? So Maharaj is telling us the story years ago before his passing. And he said that, and he was scouting all of us, who is here? He was just looking like this, like a supervisor. Right? He's seeing our souls, Maharaj was saying. And then he landed on me, in slow motion. He was telling us, his eyes landed on me. And then I thought, I am so troubled, I'm so conflicted, I'm so confused, I'm so lost. And Maharaj was kind of at the end of the circle around Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada lifted his head and he said, "What is the difficulty?" That's all what he said. And then he started chanting japa. And everyone felt electrified. So Krishna is in the spiritual world. Krishna is in our hearts. But Krishna, most importantly, is manifested in the heart of the devotee. And it is explained that by the Lord himself. What's that verse? I'm not in the Vaikuntha place. What's that? Who remembers that verse? I'm not in Vaikuntha, I'm in the heart of the devotees. Vaikuntha, what's that verse? No? Anyone? So Krishna explains that he's not in Vaikuntha, he's not here, he's not there. I'm in the heart of my devotees. Forgot the Sanskrit. Getting rust in my memory. So this remembrance of Krishna is with the purpose of helping us to understand how can we not only know about Krishna, remember him, but also share it. That's the when you're studying education. Yeah, correct. So you may learn a number of things, but when your learning becomes solidified, is when you share it with others. That's the idea. So this is what's happening here. Uddhava is experiencing some higher pleasure, higher taste, by sharing it. This is what's happening. The scene is Uddhava is opening his heart to Vidura. You can imagine Vidura's what's going on through his mind. He's, stunned by hearing Uddhava describing Krishna, sometimes crying, sometimes having to stop, becoming silent, because he can't hold his feelings for Krishna. Let's remember, Krishna has left. Krishna swedamapagate dharma jani livisaha. Krishna has gone back. So here is Uddhava bringing Krishna back. Krishna is gone, but Krishna has come back. How he came back? By the agency of a devotee. And that's exactly what Srila Prabhupada did. No one knew. I never heard the word Krishna in my life, ever. I was a young boy. And never in university, never. And then I saw the devotees, and the devotees presented Krishna consciousness. He's the Supreme Lord, and he's a young boy, little boy. He plays the flute, and he's of blue color. That was totally different from what I understood that God was. Yeah. So, this is the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam brings Bhagavan, brings Bhagavata, devotee, and brings Bhakti, the 3B. We can remember Bhagavan, Bhakta, and Bhakti. And if we listen long enough, attentively enough, then we can also experience somewhat that those feelings that these great devotees are experiencing. Of course, imperfectly. One time I asked one devotee, what is the definition of a neophyte? A neophyte is someone that sometimes remembers. Padmalochan Prabhu was giving the class the other day, right? Two days ago. He was emphasizing the point of remembering Krishna. And a neophyte is someone that sometimes remembers, sometimes forgets. Sometimes remembers, sometimes forgets. I asked a spiritual master this question, and he said, the definition of a neophyte is someone, he gave me another definition, someone that thinks he's very advanced. Right? And as soon as you think, oh, I'm very advanced, I know now, I know Gita, I know a few verses, I completed Bhakti Shastri, I went here, I went there, and then you forget. Then you are remembering mostly yourself rather than Krishna. Right? Your ego is there. So, it's very tricky. Maya, it's very, very tricky. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya recommended to be always humble. Trinadapi sunichena. Be always humble. And Krishna also says in chapter 13, the first two lessons, or the first two, what we call ingredients, elements of knowledge, Prabhupada called them. 20 elements of knowledge. Amanitvam, adambitvam. Be humble. What does being humble mean? That's a different class. That's a different workshop. Being humble, in one sense, it can be hundreds of definitions. Being humble means I realize I don't know Krishna. The devotees know Krishna. Therefore, I need to worship them. I need to follow them. I need to serve them. Prabhupada himself writes, Bhakti noi, Veda noi. He writes in his poem when he arrived in America. Bhakti noi, Veda noi. Name kup dhoro. I have no knowledge, I have no bhakti, but I have a strong faith in your name. Bhakti Vedantanam eve sharta koro. Let that meaning of Bhakti Vedanta, the name that I have been given, to have some significance. Let me serve the Bhakti Vedantas. So Bhagavatam explains that Narada Muni served the Bhakti Vedantas. Right? The word is there, Bhakti Vedantas. And what happened when his mother died and he became an orphan? Imagine here, of course here there are so many devotees, but imagine there is someone living in the woods and the little child is there. What do you got here? You got brown snakes, and what else you have? Pythons, and right? All sort of, this is Australia, right? And then one of those come and eat maybe the python. Bites the lady, and the lady's gone, and the little child is there. It will be a scandal, right? All over the news. But that little boy, Narada, he just took off. He's wondering why? Because he had Krishna. Mare Krishna Rakeke, Rake Krishna Mareke. If Krishna is protecting you, no one can take you, no one can kill you. And if Krishna wants to kill you, no one can protect you. So, these are the pastimes of Krishna. But most importantly, the pastimes of the devotees. So, we need to focus our attention in the example the devotees gives us. This is Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam brings the devotees. The Bhagavat Bhakta. There's a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Eko Bhagavata Shada Bhagavata Shastra. Aro Bhagavata Bhakta Bhakti Rasa Patra. There's the book Bhagavat and there's the devotee Bhagavat. Right? And the ideal combination is to hear the narrations of the book Bhagavata by, or narrated, expressed, realized by the devotee Bhagavat. So when Prabhupada was coming in that Jaladuta boat for 30 something days, 35, 36 days, Krishna was coming there. Because Krishna was in the heart of Srila Prabhupada and was in the pages of Bhagavatam. Therefore, when we open the Bhagavatam, we can find Krishna. That's what Prabhupada also says. You will see Krishna face to face in every single page. Those are statements that Prabhupada made, not once, a few times. You can see Krishna in every page of this book. Right? If we listen attentively, if we listen with humility. So, the last part of the purport, Prabhupada says, thousands of devotees of the Lord are still wandering in these sacred places of Vrindavan. Prabhupada was asked, Burijan Prabhu tells us this story. Prabhupada was asked, what is the best way to do parikram in Vrindavan? You know, the devotees were just coming and they didn't know what to do, what not to do. Many pastimes about that. And Prabhupada said in one of those instances, just wander around. Right? Sometimes when we go, then we find a guide and hire a rickshaw and get the taxi and they take us here and there and the whole thing, you know, like that. Says the Goswamis, they just wandered around. They just, where is Krishna? And Krishna manifests. Sometimes we find these things in the holy places. We go there and then we find devotees, amazing devotees, and they tell us things and they take us to places and they take us to honor prasadam and then they take us to some special darshan. Why? Because the devotees manifest Krishna to us. They have Krishna, so they can show him to us. So Prabhupada says, they all go to the sacred places of Vrindavan, and all of them, pay attention to this, this is very interesting, and all of them are preparing themselves to go back home, back to Godhead. That's how he ends the purport. All of them are preparing themselves to go back home, back to Godhead. So when I read this, maybe the third or fourth time, then I thought, oh, am I preparing myself to go back home, back to Godhead? Are you preparing yourself? Huh? Well, we are by listening to this, those who are here. This is the way to do it. We're preparing ourselves to go back home, back to Godhead. Why? Because Krishna says, you will come to me. Naeti. You won't take birth again. Mam eti. You will come to me. Imam ibashashite. Many times Krishna says this, back home, back to Godhead. Entered into the spiritual world. Many times. That's why Prabhupada named his magazine Back to Godhead. Right? And it's not just, like a marketing, genius. Oh, let me think of a nice slogan. Back to Godhead. Oh, yeah, that sounds good. No, Krishna himself says that. Back to Godhead. Mambraja. Sarvadharmam paritaya. Mamekam sharanam braja. Gaur Govinda Maharaj used to say, Braja means go. That's the translation. Gaur Govinda Maharaj says, go to Braj. Go to Krishna. Go to Vrindavan. Like that. Or New Vrindavan. Or New Govardhana. No different. Huh? So, if it's too difficult, for 2 years we have been stuck in different places, holy places, hopefully. And then we go to a temple, which Prabhupada also explained. There are embassies of the spiritual world. This is the embassy and here you get your visa. Huh? Those of us who love traveling. It's part of the mercy of this movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We travel all over. It's a complication every time you ask a devotee, where are you from? Right? And then starts the whole, well, I'm from here, but I live there, and I went there, and I serve here. Then it's like, oh, okay. Devotees have that mercy. Prabhupada's blessing. Okay, so we stop here. Remembrance of Lord Krishna, Canto 3, Chapter 2, text number 27. Any questions, any points, any Mataji?
I just wanted to, I appreciate that you mentioned Madhamangal, who was...
Satsaru Maharaj. Oh, sorry. That's it.
Just was appreciating, I'm surprised that you mentioned Madhamangal. He joined us in Ireland when I was there, my husband and I, and then HG to the temple there.
Chai.
And so I was really surprised you mentioned his name, but it's really true what you say, is that the heart changes. And the symptom of the heart changing is that the behavior also changes right behind it. So it's very easy to see that a person's heart is changing because their behavior is changing. And Srila Prabhupada, he used to talk about when people would say, do you do miracles? Do you do any miracles? He said, well, just look at my disciples. You have no idea where they were before and how much they've changed. That's already a miracle. So I just wanted to appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions? There we are. Haribol.
You were mentioning that the process of coming to Krishna is by hearing, and also the heart changes. But then also, I just read something on devotee Chaitanya Maharaj was saying that we should be careful how we interact with devotees. Also, that sometimes we should give them the benefit of the doubt, and also sometimes we underestimate the power of bhakti, that someone can change, that sometimes someone's behavior is not right, and then we kind of keep a distance. But at the same time, that we said the key factor, Guru Mataji was saying that the person's behavior changes. So can you talk a bit more about because we can be chanting, also we hear that for many millions of lifetimes, but then we don't make any progress.
Yeah. I don't know if it's possible for my tiny brain to understand the complexity of, I work with as a counselor, so I deal with people's mind, non-devotees mostly, but I don't know if it's possible to really understand, But basically, my learning in this is that instead of thinking so much about the others, if this is a devotee or not, yes, it's true, we have to maintain ourselves in good association, and according to the orders of Guru and senior devotees, that's true. But the main focus should be that, I'm not a devotee. That's. So the little humility I may have is, I may think I'm a devotee, but I actually not. Therefore, I need to approach an exalted devotee and follow his footsteps, And it's clear. In one sense, it's clear. If we read Prabhupada's books, and then we try to live by those teachings, and then we naturally gravitate with those devotees who also are doing the same. And as soon as, at least that's my experience, as soon as we are in association with those who are not following, or are not following like Prabhupada has indicated that the process of bhakti needs to be applied, then it's a little uncomfortable, and then you just gravitate towards those devotees who are following Prabhupada. And then it becomes very natural like that. So I personally, sometimes we have to be careful, it's true. not to judge and this, that, Sometimes you see, like sometimes I realize it's just like, it's like animals, if I may give the example. Right? Sometimes animals, they know. They go to a tree, and then they, sometimes when I go and chant by the river, I see the magpies and others. They come and they, I don't know, smell something, sense something, and they just go away. They know. They know what to eat. They know what not to eat. They know. They don't have to go seminars. They don't have to watch YouTube videos. They just know. So when a devotee is somewhat connected with its own nature, with Krishna, in good association, they know. They know where to go. And sometimes we know, I shouldn't be there. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't listen to that. Sometimes when we are with devotees, someone's telling, you know what happened here? The latest one, about this Swami and that, Prabhu and that, Mati and this, that, and okay, hold on. Okay. There are people who are just there, the news. Yeah? And then you rather, like Buriyan Prabhu always tells us, if you are interested in following Prabhupada, in learning about his teachings and all that, associate with devotees who are doing that. Yeah, now that there are millions of devotees. Now you go to Mayapur, Vrindavan, all these millions of devotees. Everyone has his own thing. So you find those who are more in line with Prabhupada, following Prabhupada, and they are, better for your spiritual advancement. Naturally that will happen. But sometimes out of our naughty nature, then we go and do. I remember when I was a kid, my mother will tell me, don't hang out with those kids on the corner there, because they are the troublemakers. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. Exactly. As soon as my mom went to work, I would run and, until 5 minutes before she comes, and then I'll run back, That's exactly. Now then I learned, get into trouble, things, this and that. So Prabhupada is telling us, associate with those devotees who are helpful or helpful for our advancement. Then we humbly take their shelter and approach them and associate with them. Rupa Goswami explains this, that it's very important to have friendship in Krishna consciousness. And I think I read it somewhere. Was it that George Harrison was asked why at some point he had separated himself from the movement, and someone asked him, so why did you leave or something like that, why? And then he said, because my friends are gone. Mukunda Maharaj and all of them, they're gone, they're somewhere else. It's natural. So the point is that it's good to have good friends in Krishna consciousness. And when I say good friends, I'm not saying, there's prasadam and Latin background, so we like the party and the whole thing, yeah? We're loud and laughing and things like that. No, but good friends means those who really help us to advance. Doesn't matter if it's German or it's Chinese, doesn't matter. I have devotee friends from many parts, and beyond where are they from, it's most important what's in their heart. Not the skin color, not their ethnicity or passport, nationality or anything. What's in their heart. And then you think, okay, that's my friend. That's my true friend. And these friends will tell us, Prabhu, come on, get back. That's not right. Don't talk like that. Don't do this. These are my true friends. That's what Bhaktisiddhanta says. So we need friends like that, that help us. You fool, shut up. Get going. Like that. That's it. That's why the spiritual master, he says in the morning that because of him, he's a friend of the devotees, a friend of the poor, Lord or Master of the devotees. So the best friend. Like that. Okay, thank you very much. Prasadam is on, so I don't want to offend. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.